Good afternoon. I'm Matthias Büchler, Chief Strategy and Transformation Officer of the Abu Dhabi Securities Exchange, speaking to you from the Trading Hall of ADX. I would like to welcome you to the ADX series of interviews where we engage with our stakeholders from various sectors. Throughout the series, we will deep dive into conversations with key individuals from our listed companies. Join us as we navigate through these conversations, examining the challenges, opportunities, and potential outcomes that arise when our stakeholders come together to address important issues on the capital market industry. Today, I will be interviewing Mr. Steve Ridlington, CFO of TAQA, an international energy and water company operating in 11 countries across 4 continents, about the importance of sustainability to TAQA. Good afternoon, Stephen.
Good afternoon, Matthias.
Great to have you here.
Great to be here.
Thank you so much. I would like to ask you a number of questions around ESG and how TAQA is addressing the same. To start with, what role does ESG play in how TAQA operates its business?
Well, Matthias, ESG is at the heart of everything we do at TAQA. It's embedded in our strategy, which we announced back in 2022. And we set out for the first time key targets for 2030. And they included a 25% reduction in emissions compared to our 2019 baseline, a 25% reduction in water losses, 30% of women in management, and a number of other targets alongside those. And I think we're one of the few major companies in this part of the world that has actually introduced interim targets alongside our 2050 net zero target. So ESG, our headline numbers are out there. We include ESG and emissions numbers in our investment appraisal when we look at new investments, new projects. And of course, beyond that, we're working to reduce emissions in other companies. So for example, last year we announced that we are working with ADNOC to put a deep sea subsea cable to power the offshore platforms that ADNOC has from the grid here in Abu Dhabi, which will reduce emissions substantially for ADNOC through using lower carbon power generation. So those are just some of the things, Matthias, that we're doing to implement ESG in TAQA.
Oh, great. Thank you. It's very insightful. And how do you ensure that ESG integration into the business to then achieve the desired results?
Yeah, well, 3 things really, Matthias. I think starting at the top, we have sustainability committees at TAQA's board. So last year, we, alongside the other board committees that we have, we introduced a sustainability committee with 4 board members on it, and they meet every quarter. And we also have at the executive management team level, the EMT level, a sustainability committee that also meets every quarter. And we review a range with the board and amongst management, a range of ESG numbers, data, issues, and take actions arising from them. So that's the first thing. Second is that we have a sustainability team embedded in the company as part of our strategy group. So it's now the Strategy and Sustainability Group. And they're responsible for putting together programs, organizing the collection of data from all of our operating companies around the world, et cetera, et cetera. And second, I'd just like to mention that on the financing side, and we may come back to this in a little bit more detail later, we issued our first green bond, which is listed here now in ADX, as you know. That was issued earlier this year, and it was a great success, but I'll probably talk a bit more about that later.
Great, thank you very much. And Stephen, how has the performance of ESG at TAQA been so far?
Well, it's been pretty good, I would say. First of all, on our emissions data, which I guess is the most important part of the story. So in 2022, our emissions reduced by 11% compared to 2021. And we also, on a revenue basis, emissions intensity reduced by 16%. And I think it's worth just saying a few words about how we managed to do that. And really the story is that we are replacing, here in Abu Dhabi, thermal, gas-fired, higher carbon power and water generation with nuclear and solar. So we're moving the Abu Dhabi portfolio from higher carbon to lower carbon forms of energy production. And that just means that we're able to reduce our emissions numbers quite substantially. So that's a little bit of how ESG is moving into action in TACO. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is to say that we've had some very good results on the rating side. So ESG ratings improve really substantially from all of the rating agencies. For example, MSCI, which is one of the major rating agencies that we use, has increased our rating from B, a single B, to triple B. And that has basically moved us from a laggard in the industry 2 or 3 years ago when we weren't really paying much attention to ESG, to being a bit of a regional leader in terms of where our rating sits compared to our other companies in this space.
That's great. So obviously climate change is a key topic for TACO.
Yeah.
And what steps are you taking to address the S and the G in ESG?
Yeah, okay. Very important and good areas to talk about. So starting with the social element, really there's 4 areas that we're focused on. First of all, HSE, safety. And that really is our biggest priority, and it has been ever since the merger that took place in 2020. We've focused very much on training the workforce, demonstrating that management is out there, looking at safety. We have a very clear understanding that if people feel they're in an unsafe environment, they can stop work. They don't need any authority to do that. They can stop and get the issue addressed. And it's just so important to us that our people go home safely at night. So in terms of statistics that support this, 2022, we had no fatalities, thank heaven for that. And the key measures of safety and in the environment that we measure, recordable injuries and spills, they both reduced 22 on 21. So that's our first, and apologies for spending a long time talking about it, but it really is very important. Beyond that, diversity, as I've already mentioned, we've got a target to have at least 30% of our management as women by 2030. We've introduced youth councils, a TACO Youth Council, and a Women's Council. Both of these councils are very active in TACO today, doing lots of interesting things. And then we have a CSR, Corporate Social Responsibility Program, which we're increasing our spending, primarily in the areas of education and environment. Those are the 2 areas that we focus in that. On governance, well, I think I need to say not much more than the fact that as an ADX listed entity, we follow all of the governance rules and requirements that the authorities implement or require. And then we also go beyond that to improve standards even further, and particularly transparency and good board processes and good board practices. So I think in all areas we're really quite active.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned before the issuance of your first green bond here at ADX.
Yeah.
So what was the experience and how was the response of the investor community to your green bond?
Unbelievable is the first word I would use. Actually, I mean, we went to market in April, and at that time, I don't know if you recall, the market environment was a bit choppy, rates had gone up, the markets weren't closed, but we were in a difficult period in March this year. And we took the decision that we wanted to go to market, and we were amongst the first to tap the markets after that somewhat choppy period. We did a $1 billion green bond alongside a $500 million conventional, and the response was unbelievable, 10 times oversubscribed. There was just a huge appetite, and I think it's based on a lot of the things that we're talking about here today, Matthias, that some of the things that we're doing, some of the targets we've introduced, we've just got investors very excited about what TACA is doing, and very interested to invest in our bonds. So new issue premium was negative, as I say, 10 times oversubscribed. We issued under a green finance framework, which was rated by Moody's as SQS2, so not quite the top level, but pretty close to it.
It was also a great experience for us.
Very good, yeah.
And as a final question, Stephen, are there any external factors that are driving you towards the adoption of ESG values?
Yeah, I think there are many, but I'll mention two primarily. One being investors. So the capital markets are clearly requiring ESG to be looked at very seriously, and the second is regulators such as yourselves who are driving that. In terms of investors, first of all, both equity and fixed income investors are increasingly looking at ESG and requiring us to pay attention and set targets, etc. And so we are. I think we're very happy to do it, and it makes a huge. Sorry, I was going to say it makes a huge difference. That's probably not quite fair. It makes a bit of a difference, I think, today, but tomorrow it's going to make a huge difference. So, as the investors become more compliant, get stricter rules, we are finding that some investors are beginning to say, unless you are doing the right things on ESG, I'm sorry, we're just not going to be able to invest. So that has happened on a couple of occasions, but not too many, but it will be increasingly the case. So there is a very clear requirement from investors to address ESG. And I think the rules for regulators are just becoming more and more clear, more and more demanding, and they're all doing the right thing. I mean, I don't wish to give the impression that these are areas that we don't wish to comply with. They certainly are, and I think they're all really good things to be doing. But I would say those are the two major areas.
Okay, great. So, Stephen, thank you so much for coming over today and give us an insight in the very fascinating and ambitious journey TACA is on. And yeah, thank you very much again.
Thank you, Matthias. Thank you.